Okay, in this video, we're going to move from building the story sticks to getting to the job and talking to the superintendent about what we're going to be doing on the job and how we're going to work through the job with the superintendent. The first thing is when you come in, you're going to want to come in with your story sticks, and you're going to want to go over the idea of what we're doing with this, with the superintendent. Try and get him, get his head wrapped around the idea of what we're trying to achieve with these. Surprisingly, sometimes they don't get the idea of the control line versus finished floor versus roughened floor. So, you kind of go over the whole idea of how we're going to work with those, and then from there, then you start, talking about the different things that you're going to need to do in the beginning. Firstly, you're going to want to talk about reshooting the control lines throughout the property and maintaining, that control line so that you're comfortable with everything going to be completely spot on throughout the house. They normally don't have any problem with that. It's normally something that they're happy that somebody else is going to recheck those, and then hopefully theirs will maintain throughout. If not, then we go through the house and just put our hash marks next to all of our openings, putting an S on them so that they, we know that those are sequels, and those are the ones that we're going to use from there. Then the next control lines that we talk about are the chase wall or the framing control lines on the inside. We want to make sure that they have all of those called out for us, and we've gone over, how that's going to work with where our windows are going to fall and where our bucking is going to fall off of framing compared to our drawings, so that our measurements line up with what they're expecting. If they have a specific setback that they're looking for on the exterior, if there's something critical about that, then you have to revisit the idea of the framing versus the setback on the block. Just things that you need to get out in the open to make sure that the superintendent or the contractor is aware that it pretty much has to be one way or the other, and we are going to pull everything off of the inside. So one of the big things is if their drawings are connected to the architecturals, then the number that we're pulling from that inside frame to the outside of the window is what we're going to use. If they're looking for something different, then we have to revisit the drawings and have them decide what they want to go with. And then the next thing is the center control line in the opening. If they have that, if that's something that's critical to them, if there's something that's very important about having that, having this unit work off of the control line and not off of the opening, then we have to know that in advance. So pretty much we need to determine early on what's critical to them, what they're looking for, what's their most important issues. And then a couple of the other things are the fastening details. This is when we're doing the bucking, we need to get the fastening detail or the NOA per se from the architect or the contractor, because it does vary, per job on what their set off the bottom is, and then their occurring going up. Whether they need to have a staggered at 1 foot or doubles or whatever they want. We're going to do whatever they want, but we need to know from them what they want as far as that goes. And then the other question is what's their edge distance on their block? Is there something specific that they need to have? Occasionally it can be as much as 2.5 inches down to 1.5 inches off of the edge. Embedment is normally, that's a standard, at least 1.5 inches embedment. And we'd like to go over that anyway. So that's checking openings, and then from there, as long as we've got all of those things out into the open, then we can start actually looking at the openings ourselves. So from there, we grab we get our laser set up for our center line. in our benchmark. So we've got the, actually we can come up just a hair on that. So then from there we can start checking our openings. One of the things we want to look for right away is you know, how clean the opening is. You know, if they're giving us an opening that they're saying is ready for bucking and it's not something that we're supposed to clean or anything, then we can go back to them and tell them, you know, hey, we're going to need to have the opening cup wheeled. You know, there's some issue, something or other, just to make sure that, you know, we're ready to go. We will be able to plane our bucks and you know, to get it exactly the way we want. But if there's obvious issues with it, then, you know, we're going to want to address it at that point. The same with the bottom. You know, if you have a relief cut in the bottom and it's rough for the pour and everything, and it needs to get cleaned up, now's the time to, you know, to address that. And with that, you can pretty much see it as a visual, but then you can also see it with the story stick as you're going throughout the opening. So here we have, let me fix this while we're standing here real quick. So depending on what your shim space is, you know, this is our actual control line. So if you're down that 1/4 inch, then that gives you your 1/4 inch shim space. So you know that you're good there on the bottom. On the top, change this again too. On the top, you see that we've got an 1 3/4 inch, so that lets us know that we have enough to put our 1.5 inch buck, and we still have our 1/4 inch shim space and a little extra space for waterproofing. So you go through the opening, you know, down all over and to make sure that, you know, you don't have, you know, that part of it isn't splayed in or splayed out, or, you know, something needs to be done with it, and that'll set you up for that bucking. So you work your way up and down, and you know you're in good shape from there. So then after that, you know that you're ready for that buck. And then for your width, with this you've got a T in the story stick, so it gives you the ability to keep it somewhat square, so you know it's a little bit more of a true measurement. So the same thing with this, you're just gonna go throughout the opening, in and out. Here it looks like you've got your, you know, somewhere around your 1 3/4 inch, which is your 1.5 inch and 1/4 inch shim space. Now that's something else that you need to be aware of in the beginning, looking at your drawings, is what your shim space is. Some of the products now are 3/8 shim space, not 1/4 inch, which is nice. So you go throughout and you check and see, okay, I'm good. I'm good for 1.5 inch buck. And then you do the same on the other side. You know, just going throughout the whole opening and checking up, down. And then from there, you know you're ready to cut these pieces. So you put this on your cut list, so that you know, you go through each of the openings and check each one, and make sure that you're at least in good enough shape to go with at least a 2x. In some cases, like in this opening, you're going to need a double 2x, just by design of the opening. Then that way you can create your cut list and you know how many you need to cut. After that, then you'll end up, you know, in some cases you'll recheck your opening with the buck, and some of these might need to be planed down, you know, run through the planer, or you know, cleaned up in some way to you know, get your opening precise. What we like to do in more recent time is to more or less install your bucks like you're installing your window. You know, when you end up finishing up with your bucking, your windows are going to be able to, or your windows and doors will be able to just go straight in. your reveals will be, you know, 1/4 inch all the way around, and make it very easy, you know, for the installation. You're not worried about jamming it from corner to corner. So in other words, you know, doing the work in advance makes the installation go a lot faster. So for the next, we can check this one opening here. So in this case, we've got our 1 3/4 on the bottom. It looks like we're good there. And then, let me get by your laser. There we go. And whoops, I got that out of the way. And we've got our 1 3/4 on the top, which gives us our 1/4 inch shim space after we put our 2x bucking on there. So there we're good. And then, you know, the same thing, kind of check throughout and make sure there's nothing that's really standing out to say that the opening, you know, either needs to be cleaned up or we need to plane the bucking more. And then the next would be the sides. And in this case, whoops. And in this case, let me see here. Oh, you know what? I don't have the center in this, but in this case, you know, we have a much wider buck on here. It'll end up being a 2x buck. We don't need to set up the center because it pretty much get the idea. You set up your center laser and run it off of that. And then at that point, the same thing. You know, you make up your cut list. You know, you go throughout the house, and then at that point, after you get all of those, you can go to the saw and start, you know, just cutting your 2x, whatever it happens to be. In this case, we're using 2x6, I believe. One of the other things you want to do, you know, either before, during, or shortly after you're talking to the superintendent is, you know, when you go to your first opening, you're always going to want to have your drawing set up on the table. You know, even though you have your story sticks and, you know, the majority of all the information you're going to need is on the story stick, you still want to have the drawings to kind of refer back to. It's also a good idea to have, you know, either gone over or have the contract and the NOAs there with you. And then the other thing that's always a good idea is to recheck your story sticks at this point. You know, it doesn't take that much time, and you can catch any mistakes that the person that made the story sticks could have made. After we get our cut list, we go, you know, cut our lengths, you know, recheck to see if whatever needs planed, you know, run through the planer, we do that. So in this case, we plane some of it out just so that we can get our, we can be, you know, very close to our tolerances, what we need for shim space. And then we, you know, after we've acquired what we need for our spacing for our fasteners, we create a story stick for our fastening. You get your two, you know, you're off the bottom 3.5, and then every 10 inches in this case, and then your stagger. And then the other thing that you're paying attention to is your edge distance off of your block. In this case, you know, you're trying to stay within your 2 inches of edge distance inside and out. And so you set that up on your board and just run with that on your stagger going up. And then you know, the likelihood is that'll carry through on the job if as long as it's all of your openings are maintained the same way. So that's it for that part of it, and then we're at that point we're ready to start installing the bucking. Now at that point you're going to want to set up your laser and start on your laser blocks. So at this point, this is when you determine where you're going to have the leading edge of your bucks. So in this case, we're doing, and this is just an example. So you know, we're not actually working off the drawings, but we're going about 1.5 inches off. So I'm sorry, about 1.5 inches recess from the outside. So at that point, we determine what our what our measurement is from our chase wall or our framing control line out, which in this case will be 8. So at that point we can set up where we determine our proud point is at 8, and let's go with 9 and burn 1, and then we can set up our laser to mark our opening to put our bucks in. So we got that. Then we want to set our laser on our marks. So then from there we can mark this off all the way around. So we know this is where we want to have the leading edge of our bucking. And then another part of that is that when we're cutting our bucks, when we go from our cut sheet to cutting our lengths, the other thing we want to do is true up the inside and the outside, run it through the planer, or run it through the table saw, so that you know that all of our bucks are going to be the same width. It doesn't always make a difference, but with what little time it takes, it makes enough of a difference that it's worth doing. And then at that point, then we know we've got a true line that we can run on our marks that we have here. It's going to be a lot easier and a lot truer all the way around. So at that, we can go around with a marker, go all through the whole, through your whole laser line, and then at that point, then you're ready to start putting your bucks up. Okay, I think we're ready. All right, so now we're ready to actually put the bucks up. We don't have a lot of the marks on here, but we basically get the idea of what we're doing there. So the next thing that we do is that we've got we've got the bucks laid out. We know the directions that they're going up with the holes that are drilled. Then the next thing we do, depending on what's in the contract, but for the most part, we run 2 beads of caulk on the back side of it, polyurethane. Whether we've waterproof this in advance or if we're just waterproofing over it, that depends on what's in the contract too, of course. But almost every time we're going to run a couple of beads of caulk on the back side of the bucks, and then we're going to place them up in. So we're ready to go with that, I think, Brad. Am I in the way? No. So does this need to come out? So we just yak this up in place. We get it on our line that we put there, and secure that. You got another? Got it? No. Just a little. So the other thing that we like to do is to make sure that the caulking is close enough to the edge. In this case, we're not caulking it, but so that you can see the caulking coming out. It's a good visual for the contractor and the superintendent. And then the other thing that we can talk about with the contractor is how they like the bottoms on the bucks. Some of the contractors like it absolutely tight to where you actually almost have to bang them into place. Others like it up about a ½ inch so that any of the water that ends up getting down there isn't going to wick up from the bucks. So that that's something else that you want to try and find out in advance. And then from there, we can revisit the opening with the laser, using the story stick once again to check and see where where we're at. Of course, we've got our 1/4 inch shim space. Without setting this up, we'll just show you, to just come back again and check here or there, make sure that you're not running out of space in the opening. With the work that's already been done, that shouldn't be an issue. Everything should be good, but it's always good to check it out. Even if you throw a tape measure on it, tape measures lie. So, you're always better off just taking the story stick back through it again just to make sure. And I believe that should be it for that.
There is the routing in the back.
The what?
Routing in the back and tapering over these openings around a square.
Yeah, no, I mentioned that it needs to be planed.
Okay.
And I showed that we planed it in different places.
All right, good.
Yeah, that should be fine. Let me check. And from there, after you have your bucks up, you're following the lines that you put on there, your laser lines on there, all the way through. From there, then you can come back, take your SDS, drill these out, and TAPCON these down. And then after that, then you start working on your preparation for waterproofing. Like I said, in the contract, you determine whether that's something that we're doing or whether they're doing. In this case, we'll be doing the waterproofing, so we'll get prepped for that and get ready to go with that. So next step, we're ready to put the bucks up. We've planed some of our bucking to the thickness that we need, so that we're going to maintain our shim space. You can see this one's been played with a little bit here to get it to where we need it to be, and then we've gone over our opening to make sure that it's clear of anything that's going to get in our way. Then after that, we go back around, brush this off completely, brush off your bucks, get ready to go with that. And then from there, we can do a little lesson on the caulking guns too. One of the pet peeves of a lot of the guys is how messed up these things get. In my opinion, this is the best way. I know a lot of guys stab it with knives or whatever, but the big thing is to make sure that the caulking that's coming out of there goes straight up the tube and doesn't end up all over everything. So this goes on. This goes on. Not willingly. And then from there, you got your tip. And it should come right up the middle. And you shouldn't have crap all over the place. So the next, from there we're going to do what we normally do is this that way. Okay. So from here, we usually, depending on the instructions of the contractor or whatever, we'll run two beads of caulking on the bucking. And this gun is a piece of crap. Gun. So the other thing is, it's not a bad thing to have it to where the caulking is going to come out at the ends a bit, just so that you can kind of see that it's been done, and the contractors gets a visual of what we're doing. The number side. I don't need that. So we run it along the laser lines that we put up there.
No, it's just on an angle. I don't know.
It's the caulking's making it tight. Right up, Okay, and from there, we make sure that we've got them all the way up and down on our lines. And then at that point, we can grab the SDS, go up through all of our pre-drilled holes and run our tap guns in, and we should be good to go from there. And then from there on out, in the contract on this, we have the fluid applied, or the fast flash in this case. So from here we'll get prepped and start on that. All right, so after you have your widths and heights cut down at the bottom of your buck, you're going to want to plane up 3-4 inches, depending on what the pans call for, on the sides and the front. So in other words, across here and here, so that when your pan goes in, it will be recessed and it won't be encroaching on your opening. Here's one of the uses for the yak extension. So holding something up to the ceiling or something sideways, you can just put that up in place, cut this to size, and clamp that into place, and you're secured and ready to run your top guns in place. Both of these are held in. You're in good shape. That's it. From here we've got the bucking up. We've caulked behind it. It's all prepped and everything ready to go. So the next step would be that we would fast flash or fluid apply this to the exterior. But at this point, we're going to show you the laser blocks. The way we set up our openings to just be able to tip the units up and into place. So having the laser set on our framing wall line, our chase wall, then we do the math off of our drawings to get to where we're going to be at our proudest point on our outside of our bucking. In this situation, that's where our units are going to be placed. So we've done the math. We've set up our laser, and then we get our blocks measured off of that to where we know that this is where our unit's going to sit, and then here's number 4. Oh, thanks. So we'll have our lasers hitting on our lines here, so that we know that this is going to be an equal amount all the way up and around.
I'll go ahead and install.
Yeah. Wow, man, we're a video audio extravaganza today, huh?
have the right blocks. Hold on, we might not have the right blocks. Let me see.
That looks all right.
What's that?
That looks all right.
It's close, but it's not 100%.
Well, it looks like it marked where the mark was.
Okay.
Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah, it must be.
Oh, it's not
On
on
the
here.
laser, yeah.
I got you. Okay.
Maybe the laser's in a different
It
spot.
could very well be from putting the bucks on there.
Yeah, so we'll have to recheck everything. But anyway.
So yeah, in any case, this just more or less being a demonstration of what we're doing. Normally we would have our block measurements on the blocks, and then we would actually set them right to the laser line, and then fasten it from there. And then this plane ends up being exactly where we want our unit to sit. And that's more or less what it looks like when we're done. There's a couple other options if you don't have enough room to screw a block to the inside so that you can have your blocks on there. But this is the general idea of the best way to get this to work for you. And it's the truest way to keep your opening straight throughout the install. So that's it. So we got our laser blocks up, and we know we've got our opening for the most part set up. So we'll just tip this up and in. And then you have your blocks.
What number you got?
2.
1, 2.
And what is it? And 3 will be on the top.
Yep. 52.
Yeah. That'll hold it in place. So there you go. You're at least set up and in place for the install from there. Should be good.
And we'll go ahead and caulk the perimeter before we fast flash. Like so. Fast flash is interesting stuff. It's pretty much like touching a tar baby. We're going to go 4 inches on the face, Greg.
Yeah. Now we're trying to convince the contractors
Not to
as
do
much
that.
as possible to just come right to the edge right here.
Right.
And then then the rest of the waterproofing is up to whoever's taking care of the wall. I would say that's probably good.
Yeah, I agree. All right.